Have you ever traveled through time? We do it every day.
Asgardia is a country with a population of more than 1 million people from more than 200 countries on Earth. Asgardia gives everyone equal opportunities, no matter what their earthly status is.
It is possible to create and live in the future right now. Are you ready? Forward progress is the solution to the entire human race. Our mission is to bridge new horizons. In Asgardia, there is no limit to the universal development in the fields of technology, finance, and arts. Asgardia is a new space and digital economy which creates opportunities for the global economy. We deliver innovations. Do you want to get on board with us? We are developing various kinds of digital businesses, attracting them to the Asgardia platform that can be backed by the means of our umbrella, i.e. franchising of the Asgardia brand. We can not only attract investments into space programs from prominent institutional investors, but also affordable amounts from the citizens of Asgardia. We comprise of more than 1 million people.
Asgardia is a chance to realize one's dream. This is a dream-driven space nation. Asgardia is a chance to belong to a community of free-thinking enthusiasts, goal-driven dreamers, and fearless innovators, theorists, and scientists.
We are the first space nation. One humanity, one unity.
Asgardia.
We are creating
The future.
Reason there were lots of tornadoes, and the house I was in kept being hit by tornadoes. And it wasn't so bad, so I'm not worried now. It was okay in my dream. It's a strange dream. I've always had lots of significance.
I'm glad it came out okay.
Well, I'm here. I got out of my...
Some of my dreams are disastrous.
Well, it seems to be okay. I woke up, so that's the main thing. Okay, well,
are you sure? Are you sure?
No,
this might be. You might be in a dream now, then.
It must be a dream, because I couldn't imagine a more perfect paradise than being with you on a Saturday. It must be a dream. All those happy faces from all over the world, and we are live all over the world. Welcome. I'm Lemon Topic, the chair of Asgardia, the world's first space nation. And this is an Asgardia legislative forum, really with one primary objective, which is to go through legislation, to give people the opportunity to discuss it based on what will be on the next agenda for the parliamentary event in 2 weeks' time. I think it's 2 weeks' time. The way this works is we will go through an agenda. I'll talk about that in just a minute. And everyone gets a chance to discuss what they want to discuss. And then we finish. Now, we don't have to spend 4 hours. We can spend 1 hour if that's all it takes. I think it'll take at least 1 hour, to be honest. But my goal is that everyone who wants to say something gets a chance to say it, and that we go through the process in a way which is open and constructive and helps the people who are in charge of each bit of legislation to do a good job. Background to this is a lot of work, including the Corfu Summit, has been invested in the documentation. So today I won't be saying very much, but I'll allow each of the individuals who are putting forward the legislation, that's Riedel, Corner Olivier, John Fine, and Ferda Inan, to make the points that they wish to make. This is all recorded, and obviously I'll work with the people in charge of the legislation to make sure that the points made are taken forward. As I said, I think this will be between 1 and 2 hours today. I think probably that's a realistic estimate. But the maximum we have is 4 hours. I don't think we'll need that. We'll probably be able to do this without a break in one session. One other thing I put in is Life Ship Project, which is a very short point, which I'll raise in just a minute. And I should be able to answer questions, but if I can't, I'll get the answers back to you. Also, at the end, I'll be asking for future events. What events do you have coming up that might be relevant to Asgardia? Very happy to respond to that and quickly see if I can come and visit, if that's useful to you. Right, so we have the live broadcast going on now. Looking at the agenda, I've just covered that. Let me go then to the Life Ship Project. The Life Ship Project is an opportunity for you to send your DNA to the moon. I have got my family on that project. We took samples, including from the 3-year-old, who was very cooperative. She saw us doing the swab and then she did it too. So we've got my family's DNA going to the moon, where it should last for a very long time, certainly until humans are there to turn that spacecraft into a museum or a biological experiment, or to reproduce everybody who's been there. Who knows? These are questions that will be answered by our descendants and not by us. Michelle Gallagher has done great work in promoting this. If you're interested in the Life Ship Project, you can still, I believe you can still buy a discounted pack. I think it's around $100, $110, I think, per person. I can't remember exactly. That it's not like 1,000. It's more like that lower price. It might be a bit less than that even. And you can buy that through the Asgardia website, and that's all available there with the discount. So that's an opportunity for everybody here. Launch time is likely to be 2025. These dates always move depending on logistics, but probably in early 2025. Anybody who has put their DNA there can attend the launch. You can anyway, but I think there'll be a particular party or an event for those who are involved with the Life Ship Project. I hope that I can go. It's always a little bit uncertain because launches move around by 1, 2, 3 days, weeks, sometimes at a time. So there's always a bit of a risk that it won't happen on the day that you bought your flight tickets for to attend. But I will try and be there. And if members of Asgardia, residents of Asgardia are there, then we can turn that into an interesting event as well, and perhaps even a recruitment event for Asgardia. That's what I wanted to say on this one. Any questions on this? Okay. In that case, let's go on to the legislation. And the first one is, let's see if Ria's with us. The first one is the Copyright Act first reading. I can't see if oh, just one interesting point. Carol Lockhart says, I'm hoping that I can attend the launch. That'd be exciting. It'd be great if you can attend. I'm certainly very keen to attend. Very excited by the prospect of attending the launch. It just depends on the timing, really. When John sits back like that, it looks like he's already in space. It's incredible how fast he can approach us when he needs to. I can't see if Ria's here. If you are here, then just raise your hand. Otherwise, we can move to. We could move to. I'm just seeing who else is here. I can see John and Ferda are here. Not sure if Corner is here either. Corner Olivier. So if they're not here, great, yeah, we can go further. Hi, Ferda.
Hi, how are you?
Very well. What about you?
Thank you very much. I like to start with the foreign affairs then.
Let's do that. Let's start with yours. We'll see if Corn and Ria turn up, but otherwise we'll do foreign affairs first. Then we go to Consumer Protection Act. And
Okay.
And then after that, we can do rear and corners work. And if they're not here, then I'll manage that, which is no problem. So over to you, Ferda.
I don't have a presentation, but as you know,
Okay.
our third version is with a lot of changes, like our independence, like passports for all Asgardians, like being a country possibly on the moon, and other aspects to be considered. All will be read in the digital thing, but we all parliamentarians have the information about it, detailed knowledge about it. So I'm open for any discussion. The core principles are protected, and also we are giving the opportunity to people to explore it from the articles published. So, what do you think about it, my friends?
I should explain that the Foreign Affairs Act is so important that it was a specific item of discussion at the Corfu summit, which I discussed directly with the head of nation. The reason this is such an important piece of legislation is because it will define our interaction with terrestrial countries. The Declaration of Independence is all important here because the Declaration of Independence is our starting point to find allies around the world who would recognize Asgardia. That is an exciting and serious opportunity. So the Foreign Affairs Act, which has now been in the process for a long, long time, is going to its third reading, and I would welcome any comments or questions from colleagues here. As I say, we don't need to have a long conversation, and also if you do wish to, you can always send me comments afterwards as well, but do it quickly. Do it by next Tuesday, please, if you can, because I would like to be able to give meaningful feedback as fast as possible. Further.
It's hard to give a discussion when you all think it the same way. We all want it, so it's always important for us to have the opportunity to be Asgardia independent and live the opportunity.
I totally
There
agree.
was
This is probably the most important piece of legislation we have in terms of it is the most important in terms of international recognition. And it's been going round and round and round. So very eager, very pleased to have got this far. And I just hope that we are now able to take it logically to the next step, which is to the third reading and then approval by the head of nation. Any questions or comments about this before we move on? If I am incidentally now looking for, I'll come to John in a moment. I'm looking for nations that may be interested in recognizing us, because that really is the key objective of us at this stage, to make ourselves into a meaningful, recognizable nation. And that is in the eyes of the United Nations. I have personal views outside of Asgardia, the work I do here. I have personal views about the United Nations, but it's quite clear that if we get United Nations recognition, that's a huge step forward for Asgardia. John.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I wanted to comment about the Foreign Affairs Act. I want to say that it's just the amount of attention and the response that and feedback that we have gotten from everybody really in Asgardia. You got government, you got parliament, you got uh, just a tremendous amount of feedback, and then you got it being looked at the summit, and it was just the Corfu summit, and it's really turned out to be a fantastic piece of legislation. Um, and you know, I'm really grateful that it got the attention that it did, and I'm re I'm really grateful that that it's going into the third reading, and hopefully I ask that everybody please support it and please vote for it, because it is really a phenomenal piece of legislation. Um, um, you know, and Ferda and the crew, the rest of the team have worked really hard on it. I've worked really hard on it. Lambert's worked really hard on it. Others in government have put their input. So it's really had a lot of hands. You know, I would say this piece of legislation is probably the most collaborative piece of legislation we have out of all the legislations that we have. This is the one that's probably the most collaborative between the different bodies of government. So, and that says a lot. So, and it really lets us put out a piece of or a professional piece of legislation that's going to interact with the international community and whale and really do justice for Asgardia. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you,
Oh,
John.
there
Totally
was
agree.
one thing.
Yeah. Go on.
For those of you that pray, um, could you uh, could you all please pray for? I'm probably going to butcher his name, but he's my deputy chairman, Gusev, uh, Gennady Gusev. He's been involved in an auto accident. I don't know all the details yet, but a friend of his emailed me and said he's in an auto accident and he probably won't be making meetings for a while. So could you all pray for his speedy recovery uh, and of course for his family as well. Thank you.
Thank you. That's sorry to hear that. These things occur, and clearly we hope that he will recover quickly. One of the hazards of our world, very serious hazard of our world. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, it can be very serious, clearly. Anybody else with any comments about the foreign affairs? Now, you have till Tuesday, close of business on Tuesday, to give me information if you want to. If you can't, if you can't do it now, then do it by Tuesday, close of business, and then we shall use then we shall use the feedback to make the final version of the document. Okay, thank you very much. John, we're going to go to you next because you are here. So let's talk about your piece of legislation, which is the Consumer Protection Act. Over to you,
Okay.
John.
Thank you, Chairman. Hold on, let me share my screen. I don't have a presentation, but I am going to display the document. Where you at? There you are. Can you all see that?
Yeah, we can, but it's not very big. Yeah,
Well,
now
how
it is.
about
Now
now?
it's good now. Yeah, it's fine now. It's fine now.
Okay. All right. This is of course, the third reading for the Asgardia Consumer Protection Act. It hasn't really changed a whole lot since the last meeting that we had. There may have been a few clerical errors fixed, but other than that, it reads exactly the same. Ricky brought up a question during the last time that we met about would this act cover would it cover Asgardian and outside of Asgardia? And yes, it does. I didn't have an answer for the question at the time. But he said it needed to look like it covered for both. Well, so I was going to put in another provision, but then I got to reading it and I said, well, I've already done that. So I kind of, you know, it in an indirect way, I kind of have it covering everybody. The So, and what I'm talking about here is, let's see. Okay, we'll go. All right, we'll go into consumer identity. It says a consumer shall be considered any individual or company in the process of buying, trading, renting, leasing, contracting, merchandising, purchasing, requesting, acquiring, or obtaining ownership of goods and services by some other means with a manner that would be considered legal by internationally accepted laws of Earth nations, nations within the United Nations, and the Scorpio Space Nation. Excuse me. Problem with the throat this morning. All right, and so under the consumer identity, it covers both outside of Scardia, inside of Scardia. And then also you have all consumers shall have the right to lodge consumer complaints. So because consumer identity covers all the nations out there, basically, then all the rights following go to them as well. If it's necessary that they have that right. Of course, most nations have very good consumer protection laws already in place. This is a very popular law within nations. And ours is modeled a lot, much the same as what was off the model laws and off of what most nations have for their own consumer protections. Other than that, there wasn't really anything else that any remarks made. That was the only one that I had to address. Everything else reads the same. It hasn't changed. So from the last time that we met, and I hadn't got any messages of anybody wanting or had any inquiry on any of the things. So that's it. That's all I have.
Thank you very much.
It's a very good act, and I hope everybody supports it. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, John. Any questions or comments to this? Okay, this has been a long process again. John has become a real expert, one of the most experienced people in terms of making legislation now, simply because he's done it so much. Ricky's giving it the thumbs up, which isn't a formal vote, but nevertheless, that makes sense as well, which is a good thing. I'm just wondering if anyone else wants to ask anything now. Carol's also in agreement. One of the good things is we've got much more professional. These meetings used to take a lot longer because we weren't quite as experienced as we are now. And so it's exciting for me that we've made so much progress that we can actually operate in this speedy way. Well, the next step there is clearly that we go to the third reading with the document as it is now, and then see if it gets passed or not. And again, if you've got any comments that you'd like to make between now and Tuesday, then please do close the business Tuesday, 1700 GMT. Otherwise, we will proceed with the document as it is. I'm going to go to the other three items myself then. I think you may have seen these documents, Copyright Act, Contract Act, and Youth and Education Act. The Copyright Act, it's the first principles. Let me just open it on my other screen. Wait a minute. I'll just give you a brief summary of it. Just going to open it. Let's see. Right. Asgardia. Just looking for it. Right, here we are. Right, Copyright Act. Right, I'll just give you a brief overview of it. The objective is the protection of the rights of creators over their original works. And this principle really balances the interests of creators and the public by providing exclusive rights while also allowing for certain exceptions and limitations. Actually, I'm just thinking maybe if I come into this on my other screen, if I do that, then I can show you without interfering with this particular picture that I have. Let me just see. Let me see. It might be better if I do it here. One moment. Actually, I'm just wondering, is it easier for me to do it or for anybody else? I'm just wondering. Let me just see. One moment. I'm just basically going to try and do something I haven't done before, which is the opening of my other computer in the same. Let me just see. Okay, I'm just going to see if I can find it. Well, what I'm doing is I'm going to open a second screen with me. Not sure if I can do this. Okay, right. Right. So don't forget to mute it. Okay, let me just try. Open Zoom. Launch meeting. You may see two of me now. You will see two of me if this works. Yep, here I come. Okay. It's a different, it'll be a different view because there we are. Right. Okay, join with computer audio. Right, okay. That should be me in two different places now. Yes, there we are. But you don't have to look at me twice because I'm just going to try and share screen. Let's see, copyright. There's this. This is when you discover how bad I am at the technology here. Share screen.
It's a clone. It's a clone. Look out.
It is, but it's a clone that doesn't remember. Here we are. Share. Screen. Share. And system settings. It may not let me do it. My computer's strange. It doesn't let me do things sometimes. Hang on. Screen share for Zoom. Let on. And this proves to viewers around the world it's live, because if it wasn't, then I have to now leave the meeting and rejoin. All right.
That's because you need to get a computer that was built after the year 2000.
Yeah, that's actually, this is quite a modern computer, I'll have you know. I do have problems with it though. The one I use, the one that you're looking at me on now, that is actually it seems to be a better computer. Or maybe the other one is just put under huge strain because it's working so hard so much of the time. Right, here we go. Let's see if it works now. Right. Meeting is being recorded. Join with computer audio. Let me see if I can share screen now. Share. Okay, this might work. Okay, this is working. Okay, now what do I do? There we are. It's a miracle. I've done it. Right, so this is the document. I won't read the whole thing. I'm quite pleased with myself for having achieved that. Right, so this is the document that I've been discussing. I won't go through every detail, but the articles cover, this is for Asgardia Copyright Act. The articles cover originality, scope of protected works, exclusive rights, duration of protection, moral rights, transfer of and licensing, fair use and exemptions, infringement and remedies, registration, and international protection. And the aim of this is that these principles will ensure that creators' rights are protected while fostering creativity and access to knowledge for the public. That's essentially it. I don't need to say much more about it, but let me ask you if anyone's got any questions about this. John.
Can you scan through that go from the top?
Okay, I'll put it up there. Right. So the core principle, hang on, I'll just do it there. Right. The core principle of a Copyright Act is the protection of the rights of creators over their original works. This principle balances the interests of creators and the public by providing exclusive rights while also allowing for certain exceptions and limitations.
I was wondering if they could add something like this act is binary to the e-commerce act, or was it no, the Digital Properties Act.
What do you mean binary?
And it works in conjunction with.
All right, okay. Okay, let me make a note of that. E-commerce Act.
No,
It's
not
not
the e-commerce, not e-commerce, the Digital Properties.
Digital Property Act, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
This act is works. Digital Properties Act, okay. Okay, I'll find a way to put that. It is logical. It maybe doesn't need to be stated, maybe. Let me have a look. I'll look at the Digital Properties Act and see if there's a logical way of putting that in the opening section.
Okay.
Any other comments I can actually try and do it now even.
Also, I was wondering if you had a current copy of the Foreign Affairs Act, if you could share that to show people how much it changed.
We can. I can do that.
I try to go through the emails looking for a current copy, and I don't think I have a current copy of after everything had been changed. You
Okay.
probably do.
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll make sure I'll ask Linda if Linda could send a copy of all these 5 acts to everybody, all parliamentarians. That would be great, please. So Linda, please send a copy of all the 5 acts to all parliamentarians.
Hi, Limbit. These acts can be found on a link I drop in the chat in Zoom. Right. And previously, yesterday I sent email with a link to all acts in a Google Drive. So you can find all acts in there.
So it's already there, John. Already there.
Okay, that's what I need to know.
Yeah, if you can't find it, let me know, and then I'll send you a copy myself. But it is actually right. It's all there. It's all there. Apologies, I should have checked that as well. So yeah, but if you can't find this or the other ones, then please say. I'll just those are the first 5. Originality, scope of protected works, exclusive rights, duration of protection, moral rights, and then transfer and licensing, fair use and exceptions, infringement and remedies, registration, and international protection. So there are already 10 articles in this act. Ariadne.
Yes, thank you very much. I wanted to know something about some specific issue as documents of works that may generate royalties to Asgardia after death of somebody of us. Is possible to add it there or not?
Yes, we could do. Let me make a note of that. So royalties to Asgardia after the death of the Well, basically, what we're talking about is copyright right ownership after death. That's a good question. That's a good question.
Yes.
I don't have an answer to.
I think it's, for example, I many books, and many of them for Asgardia, and I want to share my royalties when I die, and certain percentage to Asgardia for something, investigation or for the library, or I don't know. But maybe other people has inventions, technology inventions, and wants to create something for Asgardia in the future.
Yeah.
And all the things that generate royalties increase the something important for Asgardia, that we need money for that. For many structure in Asgardia, we can connect with the people that share the royalties. This is the idea, less or more. Thank you.
Well, that's a very good point, and that's really helpful. Let me put that forward as well. That requires a bit of thought. That's very helpful. Thank you. Carol says, ownership after death can be left in a will to someone, or if not, it becomes public domain. I think that's a good point. Maybe so. Ownership after death in will. The question is there a default? Is there a default that it reverts to the state? Is it an opt-in or an opt-out is the question. Opt-out. Ricky, and then John. Ricky.
Yeah, if someone wants to do that, that's fine. They would have to do, like you said, an opt-in or opt-out. Normally, I think, though, if a author or inventor who has a patent and such, and they're getting royalties, if they should die while it's still in effect, I believe it generally reverts to a next of kin, such as a wife or a husband or children, until the patent or copyright runs out.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Let's see. Okay, let me see let me explore that, because it's a really good question. We have a lawyer here, of course. We have Peter, who's with us now. He might be able to tell us something. I know he's not a family lawyer, but he probably knows about wills. John?
Well, I was going to say that the Digital Properties Act covers some of that broadly. So I think it would be covered in a way. I do know it's covered as far as like if you have a copyright with it, that if you do a copyright while you're working for Asgardia, that you have like a year, I think, to choose to copyright it under your name, or then it reverts back to Asgardia. Something of that nature. I don't remember it word for word, but I do know that there is a clause in there. As far as if you're between Asgardians and Asgardia when doing copyrights or patents or any of those things with Asgardia, while working for Asgardia or for Asgardia, or it has something to do with Asgardia. So the other, like a family member dying or something like that, I don't think I covered that. And it is a good point. It probably does need to be covered, and we could definitely put it in this act. Definitely, like if somebody dies, what happens? I didn't think about that. I'm almost certain there's nothing in the Digital Properties Act that covers that. So probably would need to get it in this one.
That's a really good point. Yes. Probably would be an extra clause, probably. Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to make a contribution here? Right, let me ask the Deputy Chair, Peter, is there a standard procedure you can think of that would work well? Look, Carol Lockhart says in the US, copyright is good for the life of the creator, then plus 70 years. After that, it is usually public domain. Peter, what do you think?
Yeah, well, that's the way that it is, but there is a procedure whereby you can give the benefit of your copyright to a third party or effectively put it in trust, and then it still has an ownership. But there is still, in most international laws, and certainly in England, a cut-off point so that you can't keep it private forever. But you can protect it a little bit more if you want. But basically, I think the kind of standard provision that you've just made reference to is kind of universally accepted. I mean, if you want to pay me a lot of money, I'll try and devise a way of keeping it longer. But I think what you said is about spot on.
70 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Normally, the round is 80 years. When you are doing anything in a will or in an act, you often will say that this continues until the death of the survivor of Queen Victoria, or we say, or Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, after 80 years.
Okay.
Because the law puts false definitions on things like time immemorial means 1189. It's weird, but I think what you've said, 70 years after you've died, is about right.
Okay. You got a cat?
Yes. Sorry. She wants to be in this Guardian. I think she wants to take part. Cat, will you just shut up?
Very loud cat. Is that the cat?
Yes.
It's very fun.
Go away.
What a nice animal. Oh,
Go away, man.
unexpected moment of friendship there. Very good. Thank you.
All right.
Right, so I'll make that change. Anything else? That was a very useful point. Anything else about this legislation before we move to the next one? Okay. That cat's amusing me. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to look at the feedback I've got on this one. Let me put the next one up now. And that is going to be the file open. And it's the Contracts Act. There we are. There we are. Let me go through this in the same way. The core principle of the Asgardia Contracts Act is to ensure that process of the formation, execution, and enforcement of contracts is fair, clear, and legally binding. The articles cover offer and acceptance, consideration, intention to create legal relations. That means the parties must intend for the agreement to be legally binding, has to be on purpose. Capacity to contract, free consent, lawful object and purpose, certainty and possibility of performance of contracts, breach of contract and remedies, void and voidable contracts. I won't go through the details of those now, but you can get an idea here of what's being included. It's quite a technical piece of legislation. Once again, it does interact with other things we've got. Probably is necessary. I have the view that we should have as little legislation as possible. You shouldn't make legislation just to make legislation. But having a Contracts Act, which is fairly simple and straightforward, would standardize the way that we make contracts. This is not an area that I'm personally very experienced in. So does anybody want to ask any questions or comments? I may be able to answer them. If not, then I can pass them on to the creator of the regulations of this act, which is Ria Dell, and ask her to comment. So yeah, John.
Well, I just wanted to say that, this is coming from Riadel and Bendale, her husband, the Minister of Trade and Commerce. He has certainly been involved in contracts with Asgardia. So I would imagine he has probably had some input on this one as well. So I would say that it's probably written very well, and probably in the same. It looks like it's in the same pattern that I remember his contracts going through. So, which is, and I agree with you. A standardizing, excuse me, standardizing our contract agreements is a good thing. So yeah, I could certainly see this act being useful. So yeah, that's all I want to say.
Thank you very much. Anybody else want to make any comments on this area? This is first reading. Okay. Okay, thank you. Then, as I say, it should interrelate with the other legislation. Once we get into the greater detail at the second reading, then we can make sure that everything does interrelate properly. Good. In which case, let's move on from that to the final piece of legislation. I'm just going to open the next one. And the final piece is youth and education. There we are. It's a very large piece of legislation, which I don't really want to go through in great detail. Youth and Education Act, it will be called. One request: when people send the legislation, when you're doing legislation, please do send a Word document, because it's hard to. This is a PDF. It's really well written and well generated, but it's much easier if we're able to use a Word document so that we can actually go through everything and make any changes and amendments. It's a 34-page document, so I don't want to go through it in great detail, but I'll give you a rough idea of the overview. The aim is to cover the broad range of topics and provisions related to the rights, development, and well-being of young people. And the sections are preamble, definitions, rights and responsibilities, education system, access and equality, access and equity, curriculum and pedagogy, assessment and evaluation, special education and support, student welfare and protection, youth engagement and participation, teacher development, funding and resources, partnerships and collaboration, monitoring and evaluation, transitional provisions and enforcement. Now, all of that has actually been covered in detail. We've already done. I'm not going to go through every line because it's a huge document and you do have access to it. I just want to highlight some things. The purpose and the objectives have already been passed in the guiding principles, because we did that in the first reading. And I'm not expecting you to read this now, but each section is produced. The format has been modified a little bit. This is an older version. So each section is really an article, and the numbering and so forth is modified a bit, but it's been put together really very, very well indeed. And so if you scroll through it, I don't expect you to read it. You can see at every stage has been really excellently, brilliantly put together. Now, in my opinion, and then one last thing from the very bottom of the document. Let's go to the bottom. Right. Monitoring and implementation is interesting, because it will establish monitoring mechanisms to oversee the implementation of this law and the compliance of educational institutions. Legal provisions will detail the responsibilities and authority of monitoring bodies. Now, that means that it's an evolving document. One thing I have learned about the education system is, while human beings don't change, we sometimes find better ways to educate humans. And technology changes. So, for example, artificial intelligence might have a role. And what's interesting is to see how we can evolve this in a meaningful way that makes sense to the educational environment we find ourselves in as well. There could be things we simply cannot predict this. There could be things in the space environment that requires education to be different. So I think the monitoring point means that this could change a lot in the next 100 years. And that's okay. But it does mean that we can make a start now. Ferda, you're next.
Thank you very much. I remember that our last discussion was very heated, and Corna has done the changes we discussed, and the first reading was very successful. She done a thorough work about it, and I believe that it is nearly perfect now. So for the second reading at the digital sitting, it will be okay for us to accept the discussions are uh, change and had come to a result. So I believe this work goes well for the second reading. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think that Corna has taken notice of the feedback from the last time. It's very helpful. Corna and Ria produce very good work as well. Very high quality of legal documentation, and we're grateful for that. In terms of where this goes next, it will come to the second reading, and Corna will be able to give a proper and full presentation about this at the time. I would also add that I think that we have the opportunity to have, almost certainly, we have the opportunity to have some revenue stream, some income from educational activities, because we can then sell space in our educational projects, especially if they lead to a qualification, to anybody in the world. Though we might want to make it a condition that you become a resident of Asgardia in order to benefit from Asgardia's educational institutions. But I think this is a money-making opportunity as well as an educational one, and that makes me excited. Before I became Member of Parliament, I was the Global Human Resources Training and Development Manager for a large multinational company. It had 120,000 members of staff, and I was responsible for making a global impact on how people were trained. So I'm very interested in the subject, especially the training of adults. And to me, this is a really great piece of legislation. John.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can see that this is very thorough. I don't feel so bad now in my antitrust law. I think it's 11 or 12 pages now.
Yeah.
So it was 34. But no, and that's good though, because education is very important to all of us, both Asgardian and non-Asgardian. Education has always been a key subject in anybody's home. So, and it's good that you get a thorough understanding of how you want to set the law up. So I think this is great. I'm going to actually have to take some time to read every part of this, but yeah, it looks very well put together.
I have to say, I think it's a great piece of work. I think it's really nicely generated. It is very long, but it's almost 10,000 words. It's 9,300 words, but actually it does seem to be relevant, and it's a comprehensive document. And that's why I didn't try to edit it, because it didn't have areas which needed or deserved to be edited, in my opinion. Ariadne, you're next.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I'm thinking when I reading this, is important because we want to go to the space, and the space has a very huge risk, and the validate people to go there needs to be a discipline and education and many skills to understand what means this space. And I think, well, the first part is a student with all the knowledge that he needs. Yes, I like it. I like it so much, this document. That's all.
Thank you very much indeed. I think it's a great piece of work as well. Very interesting. It's very interestingly put together because it's very logical. I'd expect that from Corner. She's very expert at putting these things together. I'd also point out it shows how far we've come in terms of our ability to generate legislation. It doesn't come naturally. It's not something which we just know how to do. It's something which has been learned, and has been done very well by Team Asgardia, I would say. Is there anything else you want to tell me now? It is a big document, 34 pages, as I say. If you want to give me some feedback on this, please do it by 5 p.m. on Tuesday. That's the closing time. But 1700 on Tuesday. That's when I would need your legislation your information, please. Okay. 1 second. Ricky says, Asgardia education needs to be available to children outside of Asgardia for homeschooling. Yeah, I think so. And Dr. Clark says, I think this would be an excellent incentive for parents to register their student-aged children to access the outstanding education resources. Taken to its logical end, long-time participation for students within Asgardia would lead to placement within Asgardian higher education. I agree. Accreditation seems very important. We should be able to give meaningful qualifications that are recognized, and also that helps Asgardia to be recognized. So there's more than one reason to make this happen, and all of those reasons add together, and I think in a very positive way. So this legislation is probably best considered an economic opportunity as well as an educational opportunity, and it could drive a lot of people to come to Asgardia if we've got qualifications that are meaningful to people. Remember also, aerospace is very, very quickly becoming an even bigger industry than it was before. And if we have space relevant education, or education which is directed in a way which helps people operate in the space environment here on Earth and actually in space itself, that would be tremendously helpful. I could imagine, for example, qualifications which overtly assist people in their ability to create societal and technical holistic solutions for off-Earth long-term space communities, whether on the moon or Mars or in orbit. Thank you very much indeed. Anything else anyone wants to say about this piece of legislation? Also as a service to the world school, says Ariadne. Yes, I think so. I think it fulfills many opportunities. Okay, thank you very much. That worked quite well, actually. But I am doing this with 2 computers, not 1. So we have now learned that I can actually do that. I'm going to leave the meeting on the other computer so that you just have one of me. There we are, just one of me now. So let's return to the other screen. Right, okay. We've actually done the legislation. That was very effective. Thank you very much, everyone. I've got lots of documents open on my screen now. So let me summarize. We've been through the LifeShip project, Asgardia Copyright Act first reading, Asgardia Contract Act first reading, Asgardia Youth and Education Act second reading, Asgardia Consumer Protection Act third reading, and Asgardia Foreign Affairs Act third reading also. That just leaves us to have one more item, and actually it was about right. This we're just finished. We'll be finished probably in the next 10 minutes or so. Future events. Now, I include this because I would like to know if there are things that you think we should be attending, either as individuals, as an organization, or if there are things that you think I should be coming to in your region of the world, which would significantly help Asgardia build its residency. That would be the primary objective. Also, if there are opportunities for us to persuade the government that you live under or a government near you to recognize Asgardia as a nation. On the first one, it can be anything, any event. And if it's useful, then I'm going to be very happy to see if I can make the trip. On the second, the ideal would be that that nation is already recognized as a partial or full member of the United Nations, because that helps us get the United Nations recognition that we seek. So I'll ask now, but you may just want to get back to me. You may want to respond to me once you've had the chance to think about it. If there are any meetings or events that you think that Asgardia should attend. Now, I don't actually really think you're necessarily going to be able to tell me now, but I would like to know, once again, by Tuesday, because I want to do a report. I want to do a summary by then. By Tuesday, if there is such an event and something that we should attend. But anybody got anything that you want to share now? Okay. Okay. If you do have something, then please do let me know. Oh, John and then Ricky. John?
Well, I could use this time, if you think it's appropriate, to unveil my antitrust law, just so people can get a pre-look at what it's going to entail, and they want to draw up questions, they can have them ready whenever we get to that point. I plan on putting it on the agenda, not this for this digital sitting, but the next one.
We can, because we have some time, let's do that, but only once we've finished everything what we were going to do. So John, if you get that ready, let's go to Ricky and anyone else who wants to speak. Then let's have a quick look, because we do have the opportunity. So Ricky, do you want to share what you've
Yes, this is going back to John's thing on the copyrights and such. If a person, there should be a option in there that if after a year they haven't registered completely with Asgardia on that, they should be able to opt out of Asgardia taking control of it, because that may keep them from filing elsewhere, and they may not want to file with Asgardia because they may feel that it's not a good fit for them. So there should be some sort of option in there for that.
Okay, what kind of option do you have in mind?
Well, that if let's say, you know, they're going to go ahead and let Asgardia take it over. They may be doing that because they don't have the resources themselves to do it. But also, too, if they have the resources, but they don't feel that Asgardia is a good fit for what they're doing, then they should have the option to be able to take it with them if they're going to file somewhere else, like in Germany or England or what have you. And so they should have that that option to be able to do that, because otherwise I would think that under law that would keep them from using and filing their idea for a copyright or a patent elsewhere in the world.
I actually don't know the law according to the. I don't know the law very well, but I do know this. I was working on a project 6 years ago, which seemed to have a copyright everywhere except America. And it was confusing because I then realized copyright law does change and it varies it's actually in a confusing way around the world. You can actually have a copyright which applies in one country but not in another, and that can cause confusion. So, for example, if you make an invention, it might be copyrighted in your country, belonging to you, but someone else could make the same product in a different country. And
right.
That's one reason I think that copyright law is pretty confusing. I don't think it's completely straightforward, but maybe we can do something as Asgardia, which is consistent and in some intelligent way relates to copyrights in other parts of the world. We've got Ariadne and then Peter. Peter, who's obviously a lawyer, he might be able to help us a little bit with this. But Ariadne, you're next, and then let's go to Peter. Ariadne?
Thank you very much. Well, maybe with the recognition of us as a nation of Asgardia, people consider the points out there to create something to involve us in that negotiation. I don't know. It's possible.
Yeah. What's happened is the copyright legislation seems to have developed independently in different countries, and there is overlap. But I know that there's something called GATT, General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, for example. It's incredibly complicated negotiation that took place way back in, I think in the 1980s and 90s. And that made it clear to me that it's not simple. It's not straightforward that these things just fall into place. Those who believe in world government sometimes say that all of this would be fixed if we had a world government. I have other reasons to have concerns about that idea, but they're not relevant to Asgardia. But I would imagine that, and we'll find out from Peter, that copyright law is one of the very complex interrelations around the world. And I know it has caused problems before when one country accuses another country of allowing a breach of copyrights. But Peter, you are in the best position to comment on this.
Thank you, Lambert. First of all, what I wanted to clear up was we're talking here and getting confused between copyright and patent. Copyright relates to literally what it says, copying someone's writing. So if you've written a book or you've written anything and someone steals the content, that's a breach of copyright. Now, if you're copywriting in the United States, you have to register that copyright. In England, for example, you don't have to. Any registration would simply be evidence. With a patent, you register it with the patent office in the particular country. And if someone steals that idea, then you can prove it was your idea and you can take action. So basically, the provisions for patents and for copyright are the same. They're simply evidence. Evidence that it was your idea and not the fellow who's now marketing it or publishing it. But there's distinct difference between patents and copyright. And if I write down on an envelope a limerick and it's wonderfully funny, and I show it to you, and you say that's wonderfully funny, and then you publish it under the name of Lembit Obik, then that's a breach of copyright. And the only evidence I have is the bit of paper, which is why clients, and I think you've done it actually, Lembit, clients who have an idea send me a recorded delivery letter with that idea in it, which I then keep in my safe, because that proves that they had the idea first. So
yeah, I have done that with film scripts in particular, actually.
Yeah. So it's nothing magical, but it's evidence. But sometimes it's formalized, like particularly in the US. and it's formalized, but it's just evidence.
I still don't completely understand the difference between a copyright and a patent.
Well, copyright is words. It's words. Patent is anything that's been designed or has an idea for a design of anything.
So copyright is a subset of a patent?
Not necessarily. It's something different. It's words. If you write a poem, you can't patent that poem because everybody writes poems. Ariadne sends me love poems every week. So you can't copyright the idea you can't patent the idea of a poem. But what you can do, if you decide, if there's some new paper which will complete a poem when you write half of it, you can patent that.
I see. That's quite a creative idea. It's called AI, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Well, but if you did it yourself or whatever, I'm just trying to think of something you could design, or a push bike that you couldn't fall off,
okay.
Or a hang glider that you couldn't crash into a mountain with, Lambert. then that would be a patent you'd need to do. And the process for patenting is quite complex because you have to get the specification exact when you register it.
Okay, that's helpful. It's interesting as well. Very interesting actually. When I worked in Procter & Gamble, which is a very big international company, one of the things we often thought about was how close could our competitors come to our product before they breached the patent.
Yeah.
Which was quite interesting because in a competitive environment, what happens is everybody looks at the best product and then sees if they can copy it for less money. And so you have these patent wars all the time. All the time these go on. Because, for example, in the highly competitive world of washing up liquid or products to clean your clothes, small changes can make a big difference. Let's go to John and then Ariadne. John.
Well, I know here in the U.S. it's been a really big problem in technology, especially they've had a really big problem with China, and they've been the United States is accusing China of infringing on all kinds of. And during the Cold War, it was U.S. and Russia. Russia's they say stole the space shuttle design and all that. So, of course, theirs didn't work. But anyway, but in a way, I can see how and why people do this because a lot of times this is driven by money, profit, and but like a big, but it also has become a problem because like right now there's a big problem that this is in the space community right now. They're talking about, especially since this Starliner didn't come back with its people, and they're starting this conversation of, well, why don't we make universal in certain things like spacesuits, for instance? Why don't we make them universal? Have universal adapters. Now, I do know that they came up with universal adapters for docking. That was something that was probably a great achievement. Um, but we also need it for like in life saving because space is very unforgiving. It doesn't it is literally trying to kill us. Well, when a human is up in space, it's literally trying to kill you every day that you're up there. Space doesn't want you up there, basically, and it's just an environment. It's very uh, lethal and hazardous environment for humans. It's not where we're meant to be as far as our biological systems are not designed to adapt to the rigors of space. So something like a space suit is very important. So I would like to see humanity go to where in situations where it's for the advancement of all of humanity and for the safety and security of humanity, for instance, in a lot of the stuff that we do in space, that they go to for instance, like Elon Musk, he, the Tesla, he made that an open source patent. In other words, he allowed everybody to use his patent, right? And I would like to see more open source for certain things. I understand that it doesn't need to be that way for other, like places like Procter and Gamble, but in certain things, I would like to see more open source type systems, promoted. And I hope Asgardia is also a promoter of open source. That way, everybody benefits from it, not just one particular group or one particular person. Asgardia is big on equality for all, and because ultimately, if one person benefits in humanity, we all benefit. If we all benefit, one person benefits. But it's one for all for one. Eventually, we're going to have to adapt that kind of thinking. We don't do that now here on Earth.
In English, yeah.
But which is bad. But eventually, if humans want to survive, they're going to have to adapt to that we all are interconnected, and we're all for all of humanity to survive. So and that's what open source does. It benefits everybody. But yeah, especially in space, especially when we're talking about space, because like I said, space is so dangerous. And like right now, they having a problem with spacesuits. The astronauts can't use the spacesuits that were designed by Boeing because they're not adaptable to any other space vessel. And so now they're having to take space. They're having two astronauts are not going to get to go to the space station. Instead, they're going to send a spacesuit up there that is going to be ready-made for the astronauts, and and they hopefully they fit, and they're designed to actually fit the SpaceX spacecraft. So, and then bring them back down in, I think, February. But you know, that could actually have been a really big problem. I mean, what are you sitting there in space and your space capsule is failing, and a Russian Soyuz capsule comes alongside to help you, but they can't help you because none of the stuff is adaptable. You can't get oxygen, you can't get this, and all they can do is sit there and say sorry, and watch you die. And right now, in many situations in space, that is the case, because a lot of Russian stuff is not adaptable to American stuff. American stuff's not adaptable to other countries, and that's a big problem in space. So I would like to see more open source when it comes to space, because space is so hazardous. But anyway, that's all I'm saying.
There's an issue with all of this, and it's that you have to balance being having material available and patents available against the motivation to make them. If, for example, you open source spacesuits, billions of dollars worth of experience and learning and research will then be available to everybody else. And so there isn't really much economic incentive to do that billions of dollars of work if everyone can copy it. And that's the gamble. Elon Musk can afford to do this because he is, I think, the richest man in the world. He's just unbelievably wealthy. I couldn't afford to do this. So if I created a bicycle that you can't fall off, I wouldn't want to open source it. I would want to make money out of it. And so that's the dilemma. That's the calculation that needs to be made, in my opinion. And it's not easy one to make. And in space, of course, when it is literally a matter of life and death in the kind of example you described, that what I think normally happens now is certain commonalities are agreed. Russia and America having tensions, clear conflict issues in Ukraine, but they still have found a way to continue servicing the International Space Station. So there are ways you can get protocols even in difficult times. And maybe the hybrid situation is that we somehow get both of those things in at the same time. I don't know how to do that. The commercial needs and the space needs, but it's an interesting point. Let me go to Ariadne and then Sarah. Ariadne?
Well, maybe we need to innovate the copyright with a DNA of us as a seal in all the things that we do. I don't know. Why not? And well, it's only an idea. I don't know if it's good or not.
Yeah, it is. It's this balance between a commercial motivation to do something and the public interest in making everyone able to access it. That's the calculation that needs to be made. Sarah. Hi, good morning.
Good morning. So I guess my question would be, first of all, I agree with Ariadne. The question of like how to incentivize people to make things open source, but would it be worthwhile, since we do find ourselves outside of the political spectrum, outside of the political realm, which is where we can be the most productive, would it make the most sense to even like just do a proclamation to call for the I just lost what I was going to say. Just to call for the like standardizing of those life-saving items in space, whether it be docking, whether it be the transfer of fuel or air, or even life suits, spacesuits. Sorry, just to like put ourselves out there in like basically in front of the world and saying, we want space to be successful. We want the habitation in space to be successful, and these are the guidelines and these are the things that people need to do. So simply when in 20 years, when everybody finally comes around to our way of thinking, we could be like, well, yeah, we basically we asked for that in 2024, and we're glad to finally caught up.
Yes, we could. The same problem arises in commercial terms. Asgardia, the head of nation, wants Asgardia to be the most attractive place to set up a business of any nation that's ever been created. And to do that, you have to still be able to make money from what you do. It's an interesting conversation, though, because then there's the second point. Some things are so important, they should be available to everyone. There's a famous example of this on Apollo 13. That was the mission that had an explosion in space, and they had to bring everyone back. They discovered that one part of the spacecraft, built by one, I think it was by Grumman, had different carbon dioxide cleaning system or removal system versus the other part, which was built by Douglas, or by McDonnell, I think. And they had to find a complicated solution to that. After that, they standardized the design so that if it ever happened again, both parts would work, even though they're from different companies. And also the same is true, for example, with flying. Normally, you get on and off an airplane on the left-hand side. It's the protocol. So all the airports in the world seem to have a left-hand entry-exit system. That's my experience. So it can happen. There is standardization. Obviously, the internet has that standardization because we're all in different parts of the world, but some consistent protocols are put in place that mean we can, in fact, talk to each other like this. So lots of good thoughts there. I don't think we can solve that today, but I think this is relevant to the Copyright Act. I need to think about how it's relevant. Maybe there's something here for the second reading as well, but I'm making note of this while John's talking. John, you want to say something? John.
I was just going to say, though, that when Elon Musk made that decision for Tesla, at the time, Tesla wasn't, they were selling cars. They weren't selling that many cars. I mean, they were moderately up there, but there were still other companies selling within the same scope. But his sales actually skyrocketed after that. And he wound up like 300% higher than everybody. I mean, it just, like you said, it just boomed after that, like crazy, after he open sourced his Tesla inventions and his patents. Everybody said that if he did it, that he would lose the company, and it wound up just the opposite happened, which is weird. I mean, you would think that he would have lost the company, but just the opposite happened. His company, Tesla's one of the biggest selling cars in the world today. And a lot of the cars that you drive today of other companies now have Tesla innovations in them. You just don't realize that design came from Tesla, or from the Tesla, or from Elon Musk. Like my car, it has auto dimming, it has auto stop and go, and does all this other stuff automatically. And all that was because of what Elon Musk did. And even something like but I remember back when, okay, let's go something simple like delay wipers. Okay, and that actually did the ability for wipers to delay was actually patented by a guy who had his patent stowed by a big car company. I'm not going to say who. And then they came out with his design. They stowed his design, and then he was in a heated battle. He wound up winning millions of dollars from him, the court case, but he actually patented that ideal, and it was actually stolen from one of our America car companies. But he got a little bit of money. What if he had open sourced that? Would he have made as much money? I don't know. I think I'd have to agree with Chairman. He probably wouldn't have as much money that he did make, but he had to go through years and years and years of court in order to get that money, because the big car company, they had a lot of money, and they tried to bury him, and they almost did, but they didn't. So eventually he did win. But anyway, I don't know. I don't know if there is an answer. It is a enigma, and that'll probably never be answered. But I don't know. I think when it comes to space, though, I think there's certain things that really needs to be standardized, because space is nothing like here on Earth. It is so dangerous up there. I mean, people don't realize how dangerous it is, and that element of danger should create an atmosphere of standardization where we do open source a lot of patents, so that the small amount of people that are in space stay in space and not die as a result of being in space. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think that's the core point. A few points here. Carol says copyright and standardizing can be complex. I agree. Sarah says, I think Peter should become the foremost expert in space legislation. That's a nice idea. And Ariadne says Clive Simpson's been talking about it in an article. And Bernd Quick says it was the same problem at Apollo 13. They had different standards in the two modules for the CO2 filters. That's exactly the point I was making. Yes, that's right. And Ariadne's question about the poem. Ariadne is saying that you can't patent the idea of a poem, but you can copyright a particular poem. But if you have create a new way of generating poetic art, maybe you could patent that device or that system, that method. But the copyright is what you do in a patented system. So you can make a different kind of bicycle, I suppose. If somebody had the patent for bicycles, generally you might have to pay a royalty. Ricky, over to you.
Yeah, on the issue of standardization and open sourcing, I think as far as like suits, I think there will probably be a development of suits that they wear for travel from the Earth to the station, and a evolution in suits that are used for work. Like if they're mining or what have you, working on a space station and that, I think there's going to be an evolution in that because currently they are kind of bulky. Other standardization, you have amateur model rocket enthusiasts that are building reusable model rockets. They'll go up, do what they're supposed to do, and then come back down and land the legs and the whole bit, just like the Falcon does. So I see more of that coming along also. SpaceX is going to hold the lead for a long, long time. There will be other companies doing the same thing, but SpaceX will always be a major player.
I think it
but
makes.
Yeah, as far as
go
ahead.
I think that the issue is if you patent something, if it's a good idea, sooner or later everyone will come up with the same idea. This is a classic example. We all have mobile phones, and in a way, someone came up with the first one, and everyone's copied it. And if someone comes up with a great new innovation, like having a built-in camera, everyone will copy it. So patents don't last forever, but you still have to make enough money out of it to begin with to make it worth going for the patent in the first place. And that's the gamble. That's the question I'm asking. And we can't really answer it, but probably it's on a case-by-case basis. And the suggestion is that on matters of supremely important safety, patent protection shouldn't kill people.
No, I agree. Yeah. But that's all I had to say on it. It's like I said, I see more of a SpaceX type suit for traveling into space, and then a different type suit for working and actually working in space. Because the work environment can be a little bit dangerous, so the suit would have to be a little bit more, I think, more robust in some aspect. But they can still slim it down somewhat, so it's not as bulky. And like I said, I see that coming. So that's all I got to say.
It seems to me, actually, just from what I saw, that the space suit created by Elon Musk is much simpler and tidier than the one which NASA is using. But I don't know anything about it, really. John, then finally, I think it will be finally Ariadne. John.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell Ricky that SpaceX just had a successful test. They launched a civilian crew into space and had a successful test of their new working spacesuit, which is one that can go work in the rigors of outside the capsule, where they did a spacewalk, and it looks very similar to the one that they launch in, except it's built a little different. Except, I mean, virtually you can't hardly tell any difference. The differences are internal more than the external. And so the suit virtually looks the same, but it's a lot more rigorous than the other suit. But it still has that slim look, that very, like Lambert just said, that very slim, sleek, space age look to it. I mean, you know, I love the SpaceX suits because they look so innovative. And
well, they also changed the helmet.
Yeah,
but I watched all that.
Yeah, and it was awesome. It was actually a huge achievement in space. It's the first commercial company to do something like that ever.
Yeah,
and it was awesome. It was Polaris Dawn, I think it was called, the mission.
Yeah,
and it was just awesome to watch. And the fact that we got live feed. I mean, you know, and that was coming, of course, from those satellites that Elon launched, giving us live feed. We're sitting there watching it live, you know, as they're doing it, as they're actually doing it. It's pretty awesome. And crystal clear digital pictures. The feed did cut out every once in a while, but yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah, but I do agree. I out of all the spacesuits that are out there, I'm sorry. The SpaceX suit just towers over all of them. It is, and the astronauts say that they love the suit better. They say it's very comfortable and very ergonomic. So yeah, and they say when they're talking about it, the suits are actually designed. Each astronaut has the suit is designed to the astronaut itself.
right.
They've always
For
done
him.
And
that.
they're cheaper to make.
But they're
Yeah.
And they're cheaper to make.
But they are talking about trying to change that so that suits are usable by different people to save money.
Right.
We're getting into, it's an interesting conversation, which is what, and we have time, which is why I'm happy to have it. But basically, what we seem to be saying is that there is a serious potential for having some kind of a standardization in terms of safety matters, but without costing the incentive to make those devices in the first place. Ariadne.
Thank you very much. It's a pity because Clyde Simpson is not here to explain his article about this issue. And I think it's very clever because he's talking about the difference in the suite space of the people. I'm talking with him about the necessity to create an homologation of the suites, because it's an issue from safeguard lives. Yeah. It's not only for it's so beautiful to watch it. No. If you need to link it, the safeguard with another, there you can't. It's the same with the phones. The phones. If you have an iPhone and I have an Android, we can connect in the same way, and it's the same. If you have a space with a different company, and you need to connect with another astronaut to save the life of him, you need to connect in the same way. Because the space is a common place without frontiers, without boundaries. And we need to connect in democratic way there. I think it's good for the new regulations in space law. In this moment, some people are rewriting the space law with some points. And I think at this point is very, very interesting to create an homologation of these space suites. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariadne. Interesting conversation. It went beyond patent and copyright law, but it was very interesting. Helpful also to understand that you can patent a way of doing things. You can copyright one version of what you've done using the patented device, and that safety should be a consideration in terms of sharing technology. I also recall the Apollo-Soyuz 1975 mission when a Russian and an American spacecraft docked together for the first time. They obviously had to create a common docking system in order to achieve that. So there's plenty of precedent for this and how it can be done. What matters is that it's done in a way that doesn't stop innovation, because if no one's innovating, then there's nothing to patent and there's nothing to benefit from. Is there anything else anybody wants to say before we conclude? Okay. Thank you, everybody. We've been through.
Did you want me to go over that?
Oh, yeah, sorry, John. My apologies. Yes, let's go through this briefly. This is really under any other business. So after this, we'll be finishing. John, let's go to you now. My apologies.
Okay. Let me see here. Where am I at? Wrong.
We can see Article 8.
That's not, that was something else. There we go. Nope, that's not it. Okay, there we go. All right. This is the Asgardia Competition Fair Trade Act, an Asgardian antitrust law. All right. That's the name I came up with. It's not nothing fancy, but it does explain what it is. I'll go over just the preamble here. The act will establish the framework for regulating fair and responsible trade and commerce for Asgardia. The scope of this act is to ensure all foreign and domestic commerce and trade being initiated, conducted, or finalized is done with utmost fairness and responsibility, providing a sense of security and protection to all parties involved. This approach prevents any party from gaining an unfair advantage over another, such as a monopoly or dominating trade or commerce control, that not only stifles economic progress, but burdens fair, competitive trade and commerce. All right, and then the core principles. This is like a first reading, I guess. Fair and responsible trade and commerce internally and within international communities. Trade and commerce activities that promote competitive environments. An antitrust framework that aligns with United Nations and international best practices, promoting fair, competitive, and responsible trade and commerce between nations. Competitive alignment that ensures Asgardia is part of a global community, and responsible and contributing member, fostering a sense of connection and shared responsibility. Domestic and foreign trade commerce practices that promote economic prosperity through equality, efficiency, adaptability, fairness, and equitable competitive practices. An initial framework embodying the value of Asgardia's constitution, allowing all Asgardians to enjoy a competitive trade and commerce market. And it has 14 articles, which are, of course, the purpose, definitions, obstructive agreements and arrangements, abusive market power behaviors, notifications, market notification, investigation, and prohibition of mergers, oversight authority and regulatory bodies, consumer protections, competition authority, sanctions and tariffs, appeals, action for damages, digital ecosystems, and jurisdictions. And right now I'm up to 11 pages. I think I'm pretty much finished with it. I have written all there's a lot of terms. Unfortunately, there's a lot of terms in this type of field, so I had to get them all in there. But I still have to send this to United Nations first to let them know because a lot of the information I have in it actually came from their template that they are asking nations to use. And but if a nation uses their information, they have to let them know in advance that they're using it. So before implementing anything, so I will be sending them a letter, and with a copy of it to the Secretariat of the Trade and Commerce Office there in the United Nations, and so and waiting for their feedback. Once I get that, then I will send it out to the chairman and my minister, and of course, Justice Committee, and wait for their feedback. And once we get all that done, then we'll put it on the agenda for first reading. And that's it.
Thank you. We don't need to have a long conversation on this because this is really any other business, but any immediate comments anybody wants to make? Okay, you've got advance. I've got one question. Okay, I'll ask mine after Ariadne. Ariadne.
Well, I saw and I see in the world a great competition with the antitrust. The people say, oh, it's so badly. He wants to monopolize that and make a demand for it. But I wanted to know, in the space, we need the same. Maybe we need to create something equal. And I don't know how, because the people say, oh, yes, it's equal. You can link it with me all the time here in space. But somebody in Earth says, no, he's monopolized there. He's badly. Many people maybe think the same about Elon Musk. Oh, what about the antitrust with all the Starlinks? And I don't know. It's a contradictional. Maybe you can explain something about it. Thank you.
Well, there are a couple of things here. One is about copyright and trust and so forth. The other thing is that Elon Musk is able to afford to do this for another reason also. It's extremely difficult to make a spacesuit. So even if you know how to do it, very few people can actually do it, because you need to have millions and millions and all the testing and everything else before you could possibly use a suit. So in some ways, he doesn't lose anything by putting it out there, because it's like you could understand exactly what goes into a Saturn V rocket. It's very difficult to make one. Or you could understand exactly how to build a super heavy Vulcan rocket. Very hard to make. So in that sense, and in fact, it seems that the Tupolev Tu-144, there was a degree of espionage when it was built from Concorde, but the aircraft became very different anyway. They ended up anyway very different. So I think that Elon Musk can do this quite safely, because most people couldn't afford to copy it, even if they understood how. And then the same goes for building an atom bomb. The concept of a nuclear bomb isn't very difficult to understand, but it's probably quite hard to implement. But let's go back to John anyway. You may want to add something.
Yes, well, that what she talked about is actually addressed in the law, because there are certain times when a monopolist works in the advantage of competitiveness, and there are times when it's anti-competitive. The only time that it would be considered a violation of the law, of like this act or any other country that has it, is when it's working in terms of anti-competitiveness. In other words, somebody is keeping everybody else by force or whatever from having that same opportunity. Now, Elon Musk doesn't keep anybody from the opportunity to build satellites, rockets, or any of that stuff. He just has an enormous amount of money and he can spend it, and he has some really good engineers and he puts them to work. And so he's not really being anti-competitive. In fact, China right now is building a rocket very similar to Elon Musk's rocket. And they just had their first successful launch of their hopper, like his hopper, and they plan to have a fully reusable stages and everything exactly the same way what Elon Musk has right now. And they're catching up to him quickly. So, and there's a couple other independent companies that are catching up to him very quickly. Yeah. But let's say Elon Musk invented a intrusion software that infected everybody's computers, all the world's computers, to keep them from building rockets. Well, then that would be an anti-competitive action. That would be a monopolist who has done something that stifles economic progress and all these other things, and trade and all this other stuff. Put some malware, invent some kind of malware that causes people's systems to crash and do all this other stuff. Yeah, then you got a problem. Then that's a problem, and that would be illegal, and then that would have to be prosecuted. So, and that's what we're talking about, where their actions are actually keeping or preventing people from being able to compete in the world markets and all these other things that are out there, and people should have that opportunity. It should be open to anybody. I mean, from me to or the average person, the average Joe, to people like Elon Musk. Everybody should have the opportunity to get into that market. And if you get a player out there that tries to stifle that, and there are some times when that happens, when they try to keep other people out and keep them from being part of the competition, then that needs to be addressed. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. I think probably we'll finish the conversation there. It's very interesting to hear this. I think also we can see why so much law is associated with copyright and patent, because we need to get this right to make sure that there's still an incentive to make new inventions, but not at the cost of lives. And overall, I think it works quite well, the process. Otherwise, there wouldn't remain innovation. I worry to some extent about certain changes in the UK at the moment, but that's not relevant to Asgardia.
Limbit, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if there were any key issues with the Contracts Act, if anyone has had some time to... The Contracts Act that me and Ria were working on.
Yeah,
Ria and I were working on.
We went through that earlier on, and I went through the Contracts Act and the Copyright Act. And with the Copyright Act, we got some interesting feedback. Contracts Act, people seem to be quite happy with. The one suggestion was to make sure that it related to other legislation properly.
All right. Is there any particular legislation you'd like us to sort of reference or build on?
I put it in actually. I'll send you what I've done. I'm just looking at the copyright. This act works in conjunction with the Digital Properties Act is the change I made. I can send that to
That's
you.
not for that wasn't for the Contracts Act though. That was for
that's
the
Copyright Act. Yeah, on Contracts Act, I don't think there were any specific changes.
the only thing the Contracts Act would relate to would be the ACE Act because it talks about contracts. But
yeah, Asgardia, what's ACE? What remind me?
Enterprise corporations, corporations and Enterprise Act.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you might want to say it interrelates with that.
All right. Thank you.
So that's good. So thank you. Yeah, we went through it. People were pretty happy with it, actually, I think. And just having a look. Yeah, there's a general discussion about other things here as well. Should we rely so much on the United Nations? Writings asks Ricky. That's a good question. Well, we have got a mission to be recognized by the UN. That's our core goal in terms of being a nation. I was just seeing a message there, Ikobi. So no, it looks like people are pretty happy with it, and I'll send you the small change I made to the Copyrights Act as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other business? I was about almost exactly right on time. I thought it would be. I think my initial guess was about right. I thought about 2 hours. Looked like we were going to stop earlier, but we had a very useful conversation. That's why these Asgardia letters and forums are so useful. All right, looking ahead, thank you. Any feedback by Tuesday, please. To KOB, I'll send you and Ria a small change to the Copyrights Act, and with the Asgardia Contracts Act, I think it stands. We probably, well, unless John wants us to, we haven't referenced the ACE Act there. I would say it's good as it is, basically. And we covered the other 3 pieces of legislation. You have access to those, as Linda rightly reminded us. Thank you for that. Any questions then by 1700 UTC, please, on Tuesday. That will give me the chance to work on whatever suggestions you make. So that's finished there. Thank you. Really appreciate the hours you've spent today. Thanks to all the team, and good to see you, Kobe, here as well. We'll be on next Thursday. Watch out for the timings. It's just possible I'm going to have to make a flight, but I'll let you know in writing before then. The chairs meeting, I think, will be the usual time. I'll just have to see if I have to make an international trip that day, but I'll try to work around our meeting anyway. So have a good rest of the day. Really appreciate it. Good evening to those who are going to bed. Good morning, those who are starting their day. We can stop the recording in just a minute, but if you would like to join Asgardia, you see we're a highly professional, fully functioning digital democracy, the world's first fully functioning digital parliament. And we make real decisions in real time, and we're brave enough never to censor what we do. Have a good evening, everybody. A good day. I'm Lemon Topic, and this was our Asgardia Legislative Forum. All the best to all of you, and
Good night, everybody.